One goal of President Obama's on this trip was to move the region's relationship with the U.S. beyond fighting drugs and organized crime. Let's talk now to someone about how he did. I'm joined by Peter Hakim, President Emeritus and Senior Fellow at the Washington-based think tank Inter-American Dialogue. Peter, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So, what did the President achieve with this visit?
Well, I think the introduction was just right. I mean, I think there was a rebalancing. There was a sense that security issues were the center of Mexico's politics, Mexico's problems, and the center of U.S.-Mexican relations. And now you have much more talk about economic reform in Mexico and, of course, immigration reform in the United States, which are two enormous steps forward if they succeed, particularly the energy reform.
Right.
That will mean ending almost more than 50 years of excluding the U.S. companies from Mexico's vast oil reserves. And immigration reform, that's an enormous step. A generation has passed when there's been no reform there. It really removes two of the biggest sources of tension in U.S.-Mexican relations. And there's every reason to celebrate that, although not quite yet, because they're both in process but not completed.
Yeah, two of the issues you mentioned there, energy and immigration, and if we could add to that education as well, were issues that he addressed, that he was asked questions about during this trip. It was almost as if American domestic issues dominated this visit rather than foreign policy issues.
Well, you know, we treat immigration as a domestic issue, but it has enormous importance for Mexico and Central America. I mean, Mexico has 10% of its population living in the United States. More than half of that is undocumented. This is an issue for Mexico as much or more than for the United States. But, you know, Mexico knows U.S. politics and stays a little bit distant from it.
Right. One other issue that I suppose was a little bit conspicuous by the fact that it wasn't talked about very much was something that has always dominated relations between these two countries, Mexico and the United States, and that's the war on drugs and organized crime. Are these leadership now saying, look, let's put that aside for the moment, let's focus on the economy?
Well, like I said, I think this is a period of rebalancing. That clearly the drug war or the anti-crime, anti-cartel hasn't been going well in Mexico. A slight decline in homicides last year, but no one dare say whether it can be sustained or not. And things don't look good on that front. And frankly, there's a consensus about where economic reform should go, even where immigration reform should go. There's no consensus on how you deal with the drugs and the crime and the violence. There's sort of a lot of ideas out there. The data is terrible. And people are a little bit, you know, at wit's end about how do you deal with this. Law enforcement isn't enough. Reforming the judicial system takes years.
Right.
Police are corrupt. It's just a very difficult problem.
How do you think the visit, short as it was, would have been viewed by Hispanics here in the United States?
Oh, I think they have to look favorably on it. Remember the undocumented population, half of it's Mexican, and another, I would guess a third is probably Central American. And to, you know, for them to hear Barack Obama talking about immigration overseas has to help hear the support they're getting in Mexico. I think that's probably a good thing, and probably not many other people are watching the trip, frankly.
Right. And where does it all go to from here? I mean, the president talked a lot about, you know, the developing trade relationship between not just Mexico and Costa Rica, but all the countries in the region with the United States.
Well, the U.S. has free trade agreements with every Central American country, with Mexico, obviously. Mexico sends about 80% of its exports to the United States, and it's now our second largest trading partner, really pushing very hard on Canada for that #1 spot. And most people, or at least many experts, think in 5 or 6 years they're going to have the tough spot. And Central America sends about 50% of its exports to the U.S., depends on U.S. markets, depends on U.S. investment, and U.S. remittances play a huge role.
Okay. Peter, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
As always. Thank you.